This has been a long time coming. The Nothing Company appeared 5 years ago. They first released a pair of earphones, then they dabbled in entry-level and mid-range smartphones, but the Nothing Phone 3 is the first time they have ever released a flagship phone. Why have they waited this long? Well, basically because this is the single hardest type of product to actually pull off. The second you start charging $799 like they are doing here, you are now directly competing against some of the best phones from massive companies with practically unlimited investment budgets, like Samsung's Galaxy S25 and Apple's iPhone 16, both of which also launched at exactly $799. So the question that we have to answer is actually really simple. Is this better? Starting with the design. I've actually been a big fan of Nothing's whole transparent aesthetic. Pretty much every Nothing phone I've seen thus far has instantly vibed with me. But this is the first one that hasn't. It just looks a bit spotty, with like half an NFC coil over here, this strange spacing between the various points of interest, and the fact that this camera is very close to being aligned with this one, but is just a little tiny bit off. It all gives me real unfinished prototype energy. Plus, materially speaking, Nothing is a little behind. They have now introduced IP68 for water and dust, like you would expect on a flagship. The midframe is made from aluminium, again, just like its peers, but the glass protecting the front is Gorilla Glass 7i, which is actually a mid-range alternative to the much stronger Victus 2 that you would get on Samsung's S25. So the Nothing phone might not take a drop as well. One thing I have to say I do like is the recording light, which turns on when you're capturing voice or video. It could do with being a tad brighter, but I think in concept, it's just courteous to let other people know when they're being recorded, but also functional. Given that the whole idea of this phone is that you put it face down when you don't want to be distracted, I could so see sitting in a meeting that you're also recording and just wanting to be able to glance to double check that the recording is still going. So mixed opinions on how the thing looks, but part of this very unique design is also to accommodate one of the phone's very unique features. You remember the glyph light bars that we used to have on the backs of Nothing phones? Well, they're all gone, and all of their functionality has been bottled into this, the Glyph Matrix. 489 individual LEDs, or I guess, in other words, basically a tiny second screen, which we kind of predicted. It was becoming pretty clear with the past few Nothing phones that we were approaching the limit of how much information you can actually convey with just light strips. Like, yes, they could light up if you had a pending notification. Yes, you could specify which contacts are important enough that they will cause your glyph to come on, and even with what pattern. So you could be at dinner, for example, with your phone face down, but still know who has tried to contact you. But then these lights, they could never give you anything about the context of that notification. So you'd never really know enough to be able to decide if it was actually important or not, without then flipping the phone over into attack position, but then that defeats the entire purpose. So, is the Glyph Matrix better? Mixed opinions. So, my very first thought was, I don't really like it. The Glyph lights were, while clearly flawed, still iconic and extremely cool. Whereas this is just a screen. We've seen plenty of phones already with screens on the back, and those screens have already been bigger, higher resolution, and in color. But then I started interacting with it, and my opinion improved a little. One thing that you can rely on Nothing doing is putting the work in software-wise. And so, while as a piece of hardware, this Matrix is extremely underwhelming in 2025, what you're getting here is Nothing's software curation. So at any one time, the Matrix can display one widget, or glyph toy, as they're calling them. You tap this hidden capacitive glyph button down here to cycle between your glyph toys. It reminds me a little of Apple Force Touch. It doesn't activate just by resting your finger on it. You actually have to apply a little bit of pressure till you feel a vibration. And then you hold that button to interact with whichever glyph toy is selected. So as I was messing around with this, I was like, oh, cool. There's a clock now. That's something that the previous Nothing phones couldn't do. And as an extension of that, a stopwatch, which is probably just about faster to use than opening up the clock app on your phone to justify existing. They're opening this Matrix up to the community. So already that community has made a leveler tool, and I am sure down the line there'll be a bunch of even more unique little applets that they've cooked up. But now I've thought about it even more, and I have gone full circle. I'm back to where I started. I am not a big fan of the Glyph Matrix. I think it's less cool and less different compared to the lights, and so far at least, it doesn't really fix the limitations that they had either. Like, okay, what's the total list of glyph toys we have? You've got battery percentage, which, I mean, I can't remember the last time I've wanted to know my battery percentage when I have specifically put my phone down so I avoid looking at it. You got spin the bottle and rock, paper, scissors, which, you know, I'm glad they're having fun with it, but who's challenging their phone to rock, paper, scissors? And who's playing spin the bottle in an environment where the best bottle to use is a 50 pixel one on someone's glyph matrix? Now, the glyph toys aren't everything. The matrix does also interact with things that you do while actively using your phone. And I would say this stuff varies pretty wildly from completely useless, like how the LEDs can expand and contract based on your volume level, like who's looking? How it can act as a torch, but a much dimmer, less evenly spread torch than the glyphs used to be able to provide, and how in a future update you'll be able to see the caller ID of someone who's ringing you by long pressing on the glyph button, which makes no sense at all because it takes the same amount of time to just turn your phone around and check, and at least that way you can also answer if you want to. There are some things about it that are not useful, but still cool, like the nothing signals, which are nothing style ringtones and notifications, but they're the complete package.